What is going on, RotoGrinders? Welcome back to the Best Ball Hot Take Show presented by Underdog Fantasy. We're getting hot as far as the NFL season. Less than 1 week around the corner. Of course, we're talking about Underdog Fantasy. We're talking about Best Ball. That's what we're going to focus on the next hour. And hey, we've had a whole bunch of videos that led up to this. This is our last one because hey, the season's starting in 6 days, give or take, depending on I think Thursday night. Let's introduce our two Best Ball experts. Batting first, leading off. It's Chris Prince. You guys know better as Beer Makers fan. Beer, you're drafting away. You're gonna put the phone down for an hour, unless you're multitasking. I'm not really sure, but how are the Best Ball streaks treating you?
Dean, I have to multitask. 3 kids, every different sport, football. I got a cat here trying to jump on my lap, so I am going to put the phone down. We just did a draft with Grant, so got some Best Ball drafts in. Now ready to talk players, who we like, who we don't like, who we stacking, kind of tie a bow on everything. We've covered every team. We've covered a lot of situations. Now it's time to put it all to the test, and we've done enough drafts now where we know who we want. We know who we don't want. Ready to talk all that right here.
Yeah, we're going to go – we've done a whole bunch of things as far as breaking down teams. We have videos of 5 teams and 5 teams and 5 teams, and really digging into them. This is the big picture, our favorite running backs, favorite at every position. And then we're going to have some hot takes at each position as well, too. And you mentioned your show with Grant. We should mention also on the RotoGrinders stream, hey, like and subscribe. And, you can go ahead and check out – you guys just did it an hour ago. You guys are live drafting there in Underdog Fantasy. There's a whole bunch of those in the past month or so. Obviously, the ADPs and things like that are fluid, and we'll discuss that as well. Let's bring in Christopher Jamino. We had to pry him away from his work here at RotoGrinders. If you like what you see at RG, Jamino almost definitely has his hands in it on the back end, on the front end. He's all over it. Jamino, we got you for an hour. What's going on, dude?
I'm getting things done in my draft, Dean. I've got like 50 going right now on the slow draft. It's like every other minute I have to go and try to figure out which one of these awesome mid-round receivers I'm taking. So I'm getting ready, Dean. I am absolutely pumped for pro football.
Yeah, Underdog Fantasy, if you guys are not aware, the Best Ball style, set it and forget it. They have leagues from $3 to $100. Their signature Best Ball, it's called the Best Ball Media Tournament. $25 you can jump in there. $25 you can turn that into $200K. Total prize pool in there is $1 million. There's a smaller tournament you can jump in for $5 and turn that $5 into $20,000. The total prize pool is $100K. UnderdogFantasy.com. You can do it with your phone. You can download the app for iOS and for Android. All right, let's dive in, boys. First thing we want to do, let's start at the quarterback. Let's see, the guys, and this is all ADP. Obviously, of course, Beer. You want Patrick Mahomes or you want Jackson if you can do it, but everything has an opportunity cost, and you got to construct the lineup that makes the most sense for you to take down winning that $1 million contest here at Underdog Fantasy. So basically, it's like quarterbacks that you want that you're focusing on possibly higher than the ADP to the field, right? So. Right. Bat first, lead off. Tell me one of your favorite quarterbacks that's landing on one of your lineups.
One of my favorite quarterbacks, and mainly, this normally I want running quarterbacks, and I'm all about that. But this is one of the pocket passers that I am good with. Is Matthew Stafford of the Lions for a lot of reasons. We saw him last season. Those first 8 games, this guy was top 5, top 3 quarterback on pace for 5,000 yards, 38 touchdowns. The other reason. Very easy to stack here with Matthew Stafford. And in these big tournaments, we've talked about it over and over and over again. And some people say stacking is overrated. Nonsense. I want to stack as many times as I can with these 18 spots that I get on Underdog Fantasy. And Stafford makes it very easy, even if you miss out on a Kenny Golladay, who I don't really like this season. You might see me talk about him here in a little bit. But I love Marvin Jones. I think he's one of the best values out there. I love TJ Hawkinson. And that all ties back together with Stafford. The running back situation, bringing in Swift is going to help. You don't have to lean on Kerryon Johnson. The point is, I think this offense going to be very effective, going to be able to put up points, a lot of points. I think they're going to be a top 8, top 10 offense in the league. And Stafford's a guy you can get pretty late. So prefer the running quarterbacks, of course. I think there's guys that give you upside with their legs, but Stafford is a screaming value for me right now. Absolutely love him.
Yeah, one quick question. You mentioned stacking, and I meant to bring this up on the last show. Last show we talked about stacking a lot and why you should do it. But Beer, is there any argument? Like, what are the chances that the winning team, the team that wins, this $1 million contest on Underdog Fantasy, the chances that team is not a stack in some way? Like, can't you just have a bunch of good players? And sometimes you're stacking at the cost of hitting your overall value, but of course you're increasing your upside, and upside is what you're shooting for. So, is there any argument to be made that maybe stacking is kind of sort of I don't want to say it's jumped the shark necessarily, But at what point do you say, you know what, I'm just not going to stack it up and I'm just going to play the best plays?
There's certainly a case for that. I would think that a well-stacked lineup, looking ahead to the playoffs, incorporating multiple stacks has a better shot at winning this thing. But it's not to say that somebody that didn't stack and somebody that hits on, a guy like Lamar Jackson last season, hits on something like that later in your draft, you hit on 2 or 3 of those guys late, you avoid the injury bug. There's no reason a team that's not stacked can't win. I just think you give yourself a better shot at winning with a stack. It's the same in DFS, Dean. A well-correlated lineup has a better shot at winning. It doesn't mean it's always going to win. You're going to see some lineups that throw together a bunch of randoms and you hit on a bunch of 30, 35, 40-point guys and you take down a tournament. But to me, you have a much better shot going with the stack. Now, some people can take it too far. If you're reaching on guys 3-4 rounds just to stack, that I have an issue with. If you're reaching a little bit to make sure you get the stack, which is something we've talked about before, I'm okay with it. So yes, possible. I just think you're better set up with going with stacks, whether it's 1, 2, potentially 3 stacks in the same 18-man roster.
All right, Jamino, if you have a thought on that, by all means, and if you have a thought as far as Stafford, who's going around quarterback 10 to 12, depending on where you're looking, and then feel free to introduce a new name into the conversation. One of the quarterbacks you happen to be targeting more than the field.
Yeah, I just look at these running backs and I look at what's going to happen when they approach the goal, and I just expect that Stafford is going to be throwing a lot down there, and I expect that there's going to be plenty of opportunities for passing touchdowns, 6.5% in his 8 games last season. You take a look at the weaponry, it just suits him well to target Galladay, who's a monster, Hawkinson, who's a monster, Marvin Jones is able to play well in contested situations. It just seems to be a no-doubter that when you add the touchdown upside to what we already have seen through Stafford's career, being able to rack up a lot of yardage, 312 per game before he got injured last season, we can expect that this team in the passing game should probably look pretty similar in terms of how they want to play. I just expect Stafford to have a monster season and couldn't agree more with this particular position.
I'm seeing him right now on Underdog, ADP, currently Jamino at 110, that's Stafford. So do I take him? And every draft is fluid and things change. You got to be willing to, go with the punches as far as what the draft's giving you. Do I take him around 9? Do I take him around 10? When do I take Stafford?
My position on Stafford is it does not matter. Take him. You can get him later than this, and I have many times. But if you are trying to make this stack, take him whenever you need to. Don't wait, and because it's you can certainly wait past the 8th or 9th round, right? But I mean, if you have your team set up where you have Galladay or Marvin Jones, or you think that you can make that stack on an upcoming term, he's the kind of guy that I want to be aggressive to get, and I will probably end up trying to wait until the 11th round most times if I can.
All right, introduce a new name to the Jamino. If you're not getting Stafford, who else are you targeting?
Look, I wish I was targeting him more. But I am making best ball teams. I'm trying to make sure that I get a couple of more of him crowbarred in towards the end, and it's Russell Wilson. So let the man cook.
Please.
For
Will they
years.
Know?
You know what? So even if they don't, this is the kind of player that can deliver a top 5 fantasy season. And more importantly, as we're playing in these best ball tournaments, he can give you the kind of upside in individual games that, let's say, in the playoff weeks, if he's had a good season and blessed you to get into the playoffs, he's the kind of guy who can just completely go off regardless of opponent. The efficiency over his career has just been incredible. And now the weaponry, when you look at, Metcalf ascending the way that he did in the playoffs last season, I grant you that, there have been criticisms in, the types of routes that he has run in the past, and that he's not necessarily like a full complement type of receiver. He's, they sort of have him labeled as a one-trick pony. I'm not so sure about that, but more importantly, I just think that when it comes to fantasy football, the touchdown capability, Russ was targeting him all over the place last season in the end zone. And I just feel that the combination of him, Lockett, of course, they've got Josh Gordon, a gaggle of tight ends. It really is set up for a situation where now Russ actually has some great options to throw to. I just don't see if they let him cook a little bit. Can they give him they don't have to give him the Top Chef kitchen. Give him the biggest Outback Steakhouse. Let the man cook someplace. Just give him some opportunities to get it done. And I guarantee you we'll see a big season out of Russ. I'm expecting it, and I do want to make sure that if I'm going to cheat and go quarterback early, that I have a couple of instances of Russell Wilson.
Beer, it sounded like you were excited as well, and you're on board with it with Mr. Unlimited. We're currently seeing him projected, or not projected, as ADP, and this stuff is always fluid. Obviously, don't hold this precise number. But as of this moment, Russell Wilson's number is 76 in the ADP on Underdog. So what does that mean? I'm taking him in the 7th round, the 8th round? What do I, and again, you have Stafford as a backup plan. If you don't get Wilson at the spot you want him. What are you taking Wilson there, Beer?
Probably 7th. I mean, you could go into the 6th to make sure you get him, but 7th feels like a good spot. And a few key points here. I agree completely with this one. And you asked, Dean, will they let him cook? I think in the past they were able to dictate the game with their defense, to hold teams down. We can run the ball. I don't expect that defense to be great this season. They're not going to be the worst defense in the league, but they may not have a choice. If they're giving up points, I can't pound the rock if I'm down 14. I got to get this guy going. So I do think that he's going to be more involved. Secondly, target distribution we've talked about. Jamino brought up Metcalf. I love Tyler Lockett. I know Josh Gordon is back. That's just another guy that can take some attention away. It's easy to stack with those guys. And you get the alarm. What Kyler Murray, a lot of people have over Russell Wilson. I do not. Give me Russell Wilson. But that's kind of the alarm. Kyler Murray gets drafted. It's time for Russell Wilson. So it's kind of built in that most people out there are going to take Kyler Murray over Russell Wilson. That's kind of your indicator that you need to get moving on it. So I like when those kind of things are built in. It lets me know, okay, I got to pull the trigger here. Can I wait longer? So a lot of reasons why he's a great pick. I don't like going quarterback early, but in these drafts, when you can get the upside that we really haven't seen from us, we've seen it in the 4th quarter. I'd love to see a whole season of that. He could be QB1. He could be up there with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, and you're not spending that 2nd-round pick to get him.
Kyler Murray, ADP currently 72, Wilson 76. So you are 100% correct as far as the alarm on that. You guys are agreeing too much. Well, let's fight a little bit because
I can throw something in the mix here that we can fight about here.
All right, cool. Well, it's got to be an organic fight.
Yeah, I mean, unless Jamino has changed his tune, I'm going to bring up Gardner Minshew here as a guy that I really want. And we know this team's going to be bad. They're jettisoning everybody away. But I do think there's going to be a lot of passing attempts in this offense. I know they struggled down the stretch. They're not going to score a lot of points, but we can make the volume argument here. We can put his numbers next to Kyler Murray's last season and see they're almost identical. A guy that can give you upside on the ground, an ascending talent in DJ Chark, a guy really liking Laviska Shenault, who, if he can stay healthy, can be a weapon here. So I'm going to throw the stash in here, and I know what I'm going to get here from Jamino. Unless he's turned the corner and he's with me, I'm expecting full disagreement on this one.
All right, Jamino. Minshew currently 163 as far as ADP, and maybe with the dumping of Fournette, does that mean they're all just going to start passing the ball a ton? Chris Thompson's a good running back to have for a quarterback as well too. What's your thoughts as far as Minshew?
Well, look, I understand Beer's position. He does not like touchdowns. Who would like touchdowns in a fantasy football league? The Jaguars are going to be doing something more often, and it's called punting. And it's called, running Divine Oxigbo into like a 2.5-yard carry. That's what the Jaguars are going to be doing. So
what a name.
If we are looking at this from a perspective of we probably want our teams to have a chance to at least have some fantasy production, I'm not enthusiastic about the Jaguars, and therefore it's not like I can't see a possibility where like deep round Gardner Minshew comes through for your fantasy team. It's just that's not one of my preferred options. And I'll just keep it as simple as that. I do think the Jaguars are going to be one of the historically bad teams, or at least in the conversation for one of the worst we've seen lately. And they're definitely tanking, and I'm just not in a hurry to get involved.
It came up organically, Jamino. Do you have a thought as far as what we're doing, if anything, with the absence of Fournette? You just think they're not going to score touchdowns, so who cares? Is that sort of your position?
I mean, it's not like just my position. I think a lot of people think this. Like you just look at the Jaguars as a team, and it's quite simply they appear to be like the Miami Dolphins were last year, except it's not Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick before he's actually good.
You have a thought on that, Beer, as far as the running back situation? Is it mostly in a void, or is there a dart you can throw?
Mostly an avoid. I know there was some excitement for Raquel Armstead. I haven't seen it out of that guy. He had an opportunity last season. Maybe they want him to be the guy. Ozigbo has looked good in the couple practices that we get here. Chris Thompson, how long does he stay healthy? I mean, when he's healthy, he's great. He's a nice PPR asset, but I think you're just going to, and Jamino nailed it. Miami, look how many running backs and how many rostered players they had. I mean, I think Jacksonville's going to do the same thing and give a lot of these guys opportunities. Maybe they find something. Most likely they don't. I mean, super late, if you want to speculate on some of these guys, I think Ozigbo would be the guy that I would take. He's going way later than the other guys, but nothing I'm overly excited about. I think Minshew can get there with his legs, with some upside games. I know they're not going to score a ton of touchdowns, but the cost to get in here, a cheap DJ Chark, Gardner Minshew stack is not breaking the bank. So I'm not going overly crazy with it. The running backs pretty much hands off unless I'm super late in the draft.
Yeah. Is there anything else worth digging into as far as you were assuming, rational coaching? We're assuming that their intent is to try to win, but we also think that they're possibly tanking. So maybe they won't do the things that will. And the Dolphins, you can argue, overachieved last year. Like they were probably too good. They probably should have lost a couple more games. All right, let's move on from there. Do you have anything about anybody else as far as quarterbacks you're targeting, or you want to open up running backs?
Yeah, real quick. I just want to talk about Carson Wentz, right? Carson Wentz is slipping ridiculously deep into my fantasy best ball drafts right now, and I can't wait to smash the button on. It's probably because of the big Q next to his game right now. He's got lower body injury right now was the report, but I think he's going to be fine.
Is that a hockey injury?
Yeah, well, more importantly, let's just talk about like what Carson Wentz did last season. 4,000 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, and I need to remind you that for the majority of last season, the passing targets included, rookie schlub J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and former AAF standout Greg Ward. So, we're actually going to see these guys sooner than we really like to here in week 1 coming up for NFL DFS, but that's not going to continue for nearly the amount of time that we saw last season. And I'm just looking at another year removed from this particular situation as a chance for Carson Wentz to really revive his career and show that he's the kind of passer who can go for 4,500, 4,600, maybe even 5,000 passing yards, and certainly go for a lot of passing touchdowns, looking at utilizing Goddard, Ertz in the red zone. And, of course, Desean Jackson is going to be back on this team, and Desean Jackson has a unique capability to play both in the deep game and also play well in the short and intermediate area late as he's developed later in his career. So I'm just looking at this as a situation for Wentz to bounce back, and he's going way too cheap.
Your favorite receiver to pair with him?
Desean Jackson, and we'll talk about it later.
All right, Bear, your thought as far as Wentz, if you want to clean that up, by all means. Otherwise, let's move on and open up running back. Your favorite running back to draft when considering ADP?
I am with him on Wentz. He covered everything. It's just he's set up for success there, even with the lack of weapons. They still have the 2 tight ends, Jackson, Sanders. It's going to be a very good offense. So I agree 100% there. Let's go to the running back position. Like you said, Dean, I could start at the top here. I really love Joe Mixon. I've talked about him a ton. The migraines are now gone. 48 million will get rid of migraines. So I don't need to hammer home on him. I really like him at the top. I'm going to go to the middle rounds. There's 2 guys I like. I'll go one here. I don't want to steal one of Jamino's maybe, but I really like Jonathan Taylor. And maybe it's the Wisconsin bias in me, but the more and more I think about it, Marlon Mack is a replaceable level talent. This guy, the numbers are off the charts. That offensive line is ridiculous. This offense is going to be good. Paris Campbell's a guy I like. I think they're going to have weapons all around. Even with my disdain for Phillip Rivers, you guys know I don't like some Phillip Rivers. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be a monster. Maybe it takes a couple weeks. Maybe it happens right off the gate, but we're just too cheap on Jonathan Taylor right now, in my opinion. I know people are worried. They have their concerns. Is this going to be a committee? I think even if it is a committee, it doesn't last very long. So he is like the drop-off. After Jonathan Taylor, now I'm into the Le'Veon Bells, the Todd Gurleys, the Fournettes, the Melvin Gordons, the whole tier that I don't want to get involved with. So it's another alarm that I want to grab Jonathan Taylor before things fall off a cliff.
Not beer. Jamino, Jonathan Taylor, your thoughts on him? It looks like he's going around number 29 is the current ADP here at Underdog Fantasy. And see Taylor and raise him, Jamino.
Look, as far as Jonathan Taylor is concerned, I'm willing to make the draft pick, but I'm not as enthusiastic about the situation, just because I probably think a little bit more about Marlon Mack than Beer does. And I also think that Nyheim Hines is a player that they haven't necessarily crossed off the list as being on the field a lot in passing situations. I don't particularly see that going away, at least not early in the season. So it's a situation where you're pretty much betting that Taylor is going to usurp everyone else because he's so much better. And quite frankly, that is well on the table and very, very possible to happen. It's just something that I'm not getting as enthusiastic about. I prefer everyone in the fantasy industry to hate my takes, Dean. That's the way that I like to operate. And one of the most popular takes from the offseason involves Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is a player who came out of the draft. He wasn't really a full-time player at Alabama. He was always splitting the load with guys like Damian Harris. And when he got here, all anyone could talk about was how good this guy was. And all he did in his rookie season was play incredible. 88 yards per game, over 1,000 yards rushing. He was one of the most elusive players in the league. Number 6 in player profiler juke rate, and number 8 in evaded tackles. He was, if you want to hashtag watch the tape, Dean, all you had to do was watch this guy injure himself. He broke his own shoulder, smashing into the violent impact that this guy can create with power. And then to boot, on top of that, they are talking about on some level getting him involved in the passing game. They've been talking about it since the combine. And then you hear Josh Jacobs talk about adding it to his game. People talk about adding guys like Lynn Bowden and Jalen Richard. And I look at the talent profiles of these players that they're talking about taking away touches from Josh Jacobs and what he was able to accomplish as just a very young rookie. He's, what is he, 22 and a half years old right now, Dean? I mean, this guy is an incredible upside if he gets that passing game work, especially if the Raiders can perform just a little bit better in the touchdown department than they did last season. So I'm looking at, taking him over guys like Nick Chubb. I'm looking at taking him, every now and then over a guy like Eckler. Certainly he's the guy who could finish as a top 5 running back, and nobody's talking about that. And that's why I think that's why I think Josh Jacobs is interesting coming around that number 2 turn as somebody that you can, maybe get a couple more shares of than everybody else. I just think the upside's greater than people are talking about.
You nailed it, by the way. Turned 22 in February. And I've heard that whole Venus de Milo thing about him. Oh, he has just no hands. He can't catch the ball. And it's always weird to me. Like, even unathletes like ourselves, we can catch a football. I don't understand why these guys can't catch footballs. Just odd. Beer, your thoughts as far as Jacobs? I mean, I'm seeing him ADP at 11. So you have to really like him. You take him at 9, take him at 10, or you're just saying you feel really, really comfortable, Jamino, I suppose. You feel really good. You're not concerned at all as far as him being back end first, front end second.
It's not like you're getting a discount on Jacobs. I'm just saying I think if you are on the back end of that first round coming around, I would probably like to take him on the other side of that turn as the second back that I'm taking. But I'm just saying, I'm going out of my way to try to get him a little bit more than I think you should, taking him over some guys that people would probably raise the eyebrow at.
Beer, your thoughts on Jacobs? You have another running back to throw out there?
So I'm going to disagree here a bit. Now, I have him RB12. It's not like I hate him. I'm probably even with the field on him. My concerns we've talked about. Why would they bring in all these? Why would they re-sign Jalen Richard? Why would they bring in Devontae Booker, Theo Riddick, Lynn Bowden? The other issue, Dean, the schedule. We'll walk through it real quick. Now, he gets a good start here. Carolina should definitely have a good game. Then he gets New Orleans, New England, Buffalo, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Cleveland, the Chargers, Denver again, Kansas City again. That's a murderer's row of teams. And you hear some Tampa. They were very good against the run. I know you want to laugh and say Tampa Bay. These are all good defenses against the run. That's the concern. And if he's not getting that passing game volume, which I would love to see him. I love the talent. I love the player. But if they're not going to give him that and all these game scripts are not favorable, I mean, they got to be favored in probably none of those games. I mean, even at Carolina, I haven't even dug into the week 1 spreads yet, but none of those games are they favorites. So I'm counting on a 2-down back that's going to be playing from behind in all the first 10 weeks of the season. That's concerning. So I don't disagree with some of the things he's saying. I like the talent. I like the player. The schedule doesn't set up well. I don't think they believe in him as a pass catcher. Just a lot of concerns. So at ADP, sure, I'm not reaching for him, though.
For the record, Vegas is currently a 1-point dog versus Carolina. Jamino, how much do you care about schedule?
A little bit. Like I think it's worth looking at, but I also think that there are certain players and certain like calibers of talent where I just will try to not make it one of the most pressing factors in my decision. Like I'm certainly willing to accept the idea that a lot of those defenses could be good and a lot of them could stop Josh Jacobs, but they have a good offensive line as well. So it's not as if that, I mean, there's two teams that play football. Like dismissing the Raiders' ability to operate on offense when Derek Carr is he's an efficient player. He's like more of a game manager type at this point, but he is able to operate the offense. And I do expect that it's not, you're not drawing dead with Josh Jacobs, even if that schedule does turn out to be really tough. So I'm not overrating it.
Here, give me another running back.
So I've talked about James Conner so much. I'm just gonna leave that one alone. I love him a ton. I think he's definitely moved up in ADP from where you were getting him early on in the best ball season. But if he stays healthy, he could finish as a top 5 running back. So I don't need to go into more depth there. I'm gonna go a little later, and Matt Breida is a guy that I continue to move up my board. And the question, Dean, is it Breida? Is it Howard? Maybe you don't want either of these guys, but I do think this offense can be functional. You said they overperformed last season. I don't see why they can't again this season. You know, you got some good wide receivers there. Gesicki taking a step up. Whether it's Fitzpatrick, who I do think they're going to try to ride for one more season, not rush Tua in there. The point is, Breida, we know, one of the fastest players in the league, super explosive, can make big plays, is the much better pass catcher out of the two. The question is health. If we know he's healthy, it's a slam dunk, Breida over Jordan Howard. So this may start as a split. It may be frustrating, but in best ball, I don't care about that. I don't have to make that decision. That's the beauty of it. The upside is what I'm chasing here, Dean, and I think Matt Breida has a ton of it.
All right, 2 questions. Currently seeing him at ADP at 97 on Underdog. Where are you targeting him? And are we now assuming that Howard's the goal line guy, or not really sure?
Assumption, yes, but I don't think that's something Matt Breida can't do. So I don't think Jordan Howard's a very good football player. It's not that he's terrible. He's serviceable. He can get the job done. We've seen that. I think Breida can bring in more ceiling, more upside. So as far as drafting him, I'm fine in the 7th, 8th round. It's a little bit ahead of where he's going, but you know, it's after you kind of fill those starting positions. Maybe I loaded up on running back early. I hammered those mid rounds with receivers like we've talked about. Now I add some depth. He's a guy that I believe in, even in an RB3. I think Matt Breida can provide you some volume in that spot. Prefer him as a 4 or 5, but really high in his prospects this year.
Jamino, I'm cheating. I'm looking at your notes here in best ball on RotoGrinders, and unless something has changed, and you have to update this. You see him as a positive play, as a value play.
No, that's definitely true. I don't believe in Jordan Howard at all. I see people thinking that this is a situation where Howard is going to be getting a certain number of touches in the backfield, and he's going to be the guy that people are drafting him like way higher than I would. I think he's one of the easiest fades in the entire draft to me is Jordan Howard. But that just plays into my love for Breida, because not only do I think that he'll start the season with a pass catching role, with a role that will involve, decent usage early in the season, but I think eventually he'll just completely outplay all the other backs on this team and earn a very large share of this workload relative to his draft position. So it's just an easy call for me that we're aiming to get him on our team more than our opponents do.
Howard's current ADP is 88. Breida currently 97. I agree with you, by the way. They traded for him. This is a guy they wanted. They gave up some draft equity, I think a 4th rounder, if I remember correctly. Your thoughts, Jamino, on anybody else as far as running backs, or you want to open up receivers?
Yeah, just real quick. If we're getting into the mid to late rounds, I would say probably like towards the end of the single-digit rounds, early double-digit rounds. James White and Chase Edmonds are 2 players that I believe are going to have sort of part-time roles right away in this season, where they're going to be involved in the passing games, and especially on full PPR formats. I'm loving them, but I think you can even use them on Underdog Fantasy if you're getting them for the right price. And I just think that what's going on with both of these guys is they're both in situations where if nothing changes with the way we expect that this situation's to go, that they're going to have a good number of spiked weeks for these best ball formats. But, we were already seeing Damian Harris with a recurring, he's got another hand injury. He had one last year. And we're also seeing Sony Michel banged up to start the season. Who knows how healthy he'll end up being or if they even still like him. I just think that White has a potential to be on the field an awful lot as the season goes along, and we're getting receptions, which are worth more in fantasy football. And Chase Edmonds, same situation. They're already talking about scheming him into the passing game, playing on that Arizona offense that does kind of play horizontally and gets backs into space, gets players into space, spreads the field out really well. And, of course, if something does happen to the lead back there, he's a monster. So I like both those plays because they have good, solid ability to be used now and huge upside.
What is the upside for White? Like, he's not ever going to be like a bell cow guy, but what's like the most carries he can get per game? Of course, his biggest perk is receptions as a running back, but is he a guy that can get 8, 12 carries a game in theory?
I don't care how many carries he has. I care how many catches he has.
Okay, that's it. All you care was the catches.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at like, okay, here's a situation where you might see like if you picture Cam Newton on the goal line, right? Picture how that kind of works out with the option pitch. I heard this on another show. I want to give them credit. I forget where I heard it. I think it might have been the Podfather, but they were. I thought it was a good point. If you're down there on the goal line and they're running that little pitch option play, who's going to be in the backfield for that one? It's not going to be slow ass Sony Michel. It could be Burkhead, but more likely James White. So I do think that there's some opportunity for rushing touchdowns too.
Yeah, Beer, you have any thoughts on those, or you want to open up receivers for us?
We'll just wrap it up. I agree with some of the points there. I really like Chase Edmonds, a guy keep moving up. It's those running backs that have a role right away. Kareem Hunt, Latavius Murray, Chase Edmonds. If something were to happen, they're going to drastically outproduce where they're picked. So those are three that really stand out to me. I do think Edmonds will have a role. This was a team that was very good on the ground. The offense is going to get better. Drake has never been a guy that's been able to carry the load and, frankly, has always been hurt. So Edmonds, Hunt, Latavius Murray, all at different points in the draft, but they give you that double value where there's a floor there instantly and a huge ceiling if something were to happen to the guy in front of them.
Receivers, Beer, fire away.
I'll leave the Pittsburgh. I love Juju. I love Connor. I love that whole team. So I'll leave that alone. My guy all summer, Dean's been Will Fuller, and I'm going to continue to say that name and be happy drafting him. You can get him as your wide receiver 4 or 5 in some drafts. I think a lot of people are scared off by the health concerns, but what you forget is, give me some big games. If he gets hurt, it's not like you just get a 0 for that spot. I got other guys that can help fill in here. But the upside, the rapport is there with Sean Watson. You got Randall Cobb coming in. You got Brandon Cooks coming in. You got David Johnson coming in. All these guys are new to the offense. These two guys have that rapport. They've shown it before. We've seen huge spike games on Will Fuller. We've seen games where, he should have had a huge game. I think that one he dropped 3 touchdowns. So just massive, massive upside. And if people are going to be scared off by injuries, playing things safe, forget that. I'm playing to win, and Will Fuller's a guy that can help me win a lot of money this season. So I'm putting Will Fuller as a guy I want, and I already have probably my highest owned receiver if I were to pull up my ownership right now. I absolutely love him, Dean.
Yeah, you play to win the game. Fuller currently being drafted at 57 on Underdog Fantasy. The absence of Hopkins, I guess, and of course there's the injury concerns as well, Jamino. And I suppose defenses will concentrate on a little bit more, but more usage as well. More balls being delegated his way with Hopkins being God. Is that an overall plus or an overall negative, or you don't really care and you just like the talent and he's just being underdrafted?
He's definitely being I don't know if he's being underdrafted anymore, but I do think that I love the talent, and I do think that he can do more than what people give him credit for. I think that Hopkins not being there isn't really anything but a plus. I mean, Hopkins was commanding a lot of target share. We were projecting him for 28+% of targets on a weekly basis, and now that's all gone. And now the guys around him can't really do some of the things that Hopkins could do. So I expect them to ask some of that of Will Fuller. I don't think he's just going to be running straight 9 patterns down the field all game long. I expect him to be extremely involved, on every down. So that's really, or every passing down, I should say. So I am interested in Will Fuller being ahead of the field on him. And I do think that he's probably one of my highest owned players in best ball.
All right. If not Fuller, who is one of your favorite receivers?
Rarefied air is going to be reached in terms of target volume for Terry McLaurin this year. I look at, former league loser Antonio Gibson gets bailed out with the Adrian Peterson cut. But basically, other than guys like him, the target distribution is going to be pretty thin here. And give Dwayne Haskins some credit for holding off any competition from Alex Smith at quarterback over the summer. Not that that was really a big threat, but the guy does have a chance to be maybe a little bit better than we're giving him credit for. I'll wait and see it before I go out of my chair here to praise Dwayne Haskins. But you look at the potential target ceiling we could see here for McLaurin, it's definitely well over 120. I mean, it's a guy who could have one of those rare consolidated target seasons if he stays healthy. Athletically, very, very gifted, 95th percentile speed score guy. We saw last year the explosive play capability. The games that we can expect Washington to be playing this year, we're probably not expecting them to be winning a lot of games. So I do think that the passing volume will be pretty decent for, Ron Rivera's squad out there. They got Scott Turner manning the offense. And I just do think that there's not as many guys that can reach, the excessive target share that McLaurin can reach in a season. And I think we'll see it this year.
Can I just retort with your whole argument against one of your big arguments against Jacksonville was they're not going to score touchdowns and their offense is going to be terrible and they're going to be punting a lot. Isn't Washington going to be kind of doing the same thing? Now I know quarterback and receivers, different things, different functions of the offense, but is that worth considering as far as touchdown equity when it comes to McLaurin?
Well, we were talking about the quarterback, and we're talking about a wide receiver who does get a half point or a full point per reception, depending on where your fantasy league is being held. So when you have that kind of scoring format and the guy is well over 100 targets, I think you can make up for, some negative touchdown situations. And look, it's a fair point. I'm not trying to be hypocritical. I don't want to load up on Washington Redskins or Washington or football team this year, but I do want to have plenty of Terry McLaurin.
All right, Beer, you have a thought on Terry McLaurin, and feel free to throw somebody out yourself.
Yeah, I agree with McLaurin. I mean, you look around, you got a quarterback playing tight end and Logan Thomas. You got Steven Sims coming out of nowhere. I mean, he's going to get a ton of looks, and he has that same rapport. Going back to Ohio State, we saw it last season in an absolutely terrible rookie season for Haskins. McLaurin still put up some big numbers and against some good corners too. I mean, he didn't do it just against anybody. This guy was he had Stephen Gilmore in the spin cycle. So this is a guy that can create separation. A lot of the advanced metrics look good for him. So definitely an agreement on that one. That whole tier, Dean. I mean, Ridley, Woods, Lockett, Metcalf, Chark, McLaurin, Fuller. I mean, it's just loaded up. So we've talked over and over about hammering receiver there. I love all those guys, but I'm going to bring up Hollywood Brown here. Fully healthy, gained some muscle, big play waiting to happen. I think Baltimore's definitely going to have to throw more in it. It's pretty much him and Mark Andrews. I mean, Willie Snead is a guy. They don't target their running backs a ton. I mean, is Miles Boykins suddenly going to show up and be a thing? So I just like the combination of the targets will be there. The upside is huge with this guy, and the offense is going to be one of the top 3 offenses in the league, and you're getting a drastic discount on him. People see him as a one-trick pony. I think you're going to see more Hollywood Brown getting involved in some of the shorter stuff, the slants. Maybe they get him the ball out of the backfield. You're going to see them get creative with him, and he's way too cheap in these drafts.
Jamino, your thoughts on Hollywood? Fun fact, though, I learned this the other day. I thought Hollywood, and maybe this is the case, I still don't know. I thought he was nicknamed Hollywood Marquise is his real name, but I thought he was nicknamed that because that's just sort of like a cool wide receiver nickname, and it kind of speaks to his skill set. He was born in Hollywood, Florida. He went to Chaminade. So I don't know where did the nickname come from, Jamino. Do we know? It's important stuff.
I'm not spending my valuable time looking up what's going on with Hollywood Brown's nickname, but
this matters.
Now, look, I will say that when your quarterback has a 9% touchdown rate, and that is not 100% fluky, like a lot of that was driven by the fact that the quarterback is the never foreseen rushing threat at the position, and they were able to do things to defenses that they're just ill-equipped to handle. It's very difficult to account for the quarterback when he's that good. So I do expect that Mark Andrews probably won't catch 25, 30 touchdowns, and that there will be a few more touchdowns this season to go around for a guy like Hollywood Brown. And I do think that he's worth drafting there as a favorite in that tier.
Does anybody have a read as far as his snap percentage this year? Because that was one of the things, and he got it done in 40%, 30%, and he was dinged last year also too, kind of playing with an injury. Was it a hammy? I can't remember what it was. He kind of played through it some games. But is there any sort of thought in the beats saying it, Beer, Jamino, anybody have an idea as what's his snap count percentage going to be?
I mean, I think it'll be higher, but I think it's going to be a thing for him and Andrews. And I think that's a positive for both of them, as they did a ton of damage in very limited snaps. So you start to raise that share for both of them. And again, the sky's the limit. So it's a ceiling play. It's a guy that you take after most of these names that we just rattled off in that middle tier, and still get a lot of upside there. Maybe you did take Lamar Jackson. You grabbed this guy in the 5th, 6th round. So I do expect him to be on the field way more. I expect the same from Mark Andrews.
All right, tight ends. We got to pick up the pace, boys. Jamino, open up tight ends for us.
Beer was talking about him earlier, but TJ Hawkinson is a player that who coming out of the draft, people were expecting to be one of those rarefied kind of guys athletically who could be in like the Kelsey Gronk territory. And of course, he's really, really, really good friends with George Kittle. So we can expect that. I don't know if that's like the same thing as a shower narrative, but it's definitely a situation where he's trying to be in that category of player as far as his training regimen, as far as his athletic skills, and certainly the opportunity is going to be there in Detroit. Last season, as you know, towards the end of the season, we started to see flashes of what was going to be possible. Ended up getting dinged up, but the situation in 2020 I expect to be very different. I expect him to be one of the top touchdown producers in the league this season, and I'm drafting him aggressively as one of my very favorite players in the entire draft. Forget tight end.
I like how like Hollywood's nickname is not important, but TJ Hawkinson being friends with George Kittle, that we have to feature.
The shower narrative's always important, Dean. Come on, get your priorities straight.
I'm trying to establish that the guy, like the personality of this player is he wants to be one of the top players in the league, and you're not drafting him at anywhere near that kind of price tag. You're drafting him around nothing burgers, like Austin Hooper. I mean, look, Austin Hooper is a good player and all, but I mean, just for the draft price, why would you ever draft Darren Waller, as good as Darren Waller really is? And he's good. He's really good. But I just think that you're getting maybe not the same kind of consolidation of target workload, but certainly the same touchdown upside with a guy like Hawkinson like 7 rounds later.
So 124, Jamino, is Hunter Henry, 123 Hawkinson, and your boy Beetlejuice, 122 Jared Cook. What are your thoughts on that?
That's ridiculous. Why would you ever draft Jared Cook over TJ Hawkinson this season? That's stupid.
I knew that would tilt you.
Beetlejuice.
What are your thoughts here, Beer? I was going to call you Beetle for a second. Or Beat. I was listening.
Say Beetlejuice one more time, Dean. We're going to have some issues. He may appear.
Candy.
That's
Beer,
right.
What do you have for me as far as Hawkinson and some other tight ends?
Love Hawk. I love the Lions. I mean, the pedigree's there. This guy was taken that high in the draft for a reason. We can argue about whether that was a mistake or not, but this reminds me of the George Kittle situation where you saw the flashes. He was a guy that you could take later in the draft, and then boom, he blows up. He's a top 3 tight end. So tight ends take 2, 3, 4 years sometimes. It's a tough position to come in the league to learn because you're not just learning to be a receiver. You got to learn the blocking schemes as well. So I do expect him to produce a ton of touchdowns in that offense. Love him stacking with Stafford. I'll throw a couple guys here, Dean. I know we're running short on time. Chris Herndon is a guy I'm aggressively trying to get. The Jets offense, it's just a lack of playmakers. Jamison Crowder, about as boring as it gets. I think there's upside with Chris Herndon. Has that rapport with Sam Darnold. I like him. I also like Blake Jarwin a lot. We keep talking about all these other pieces of Dallas. Dak loves to throw the tight end, and Jason Witten got 83 targets in that offense. Let's give those to Blake Jarwin. They spent a lot of money on this guy. I think he's kind of the forgotten man there in Dallas, and he's the one you can get super late. After all these other guys go, you can still scoop up Blake Jarwin. So Herndon, I agree on Hawkinson, and really love Blake Jarwin as well.
ADP on Underdog Fantasy, Jarwin 139, Herndon 141. Jamino, I know in previous shows you talked about liking Herndon, so I imagine he's your preferred of them amongst those two if you miss out on a guy like Hawkinson?
Yeah, there's no target competition there. They need him very badly, so I do love Herndon. You look at the injuries. Perriman's injured. Mims is not played in training camp. It's just going to be the Herndon show here early in the season as far as the passing targets are concerned.
All right, you got anything else as far as tight ends? Do we know, or you want to talk about some players? We featured a lot of time for guys we want. When we're going to mention some guys we don't want at positions as well, too. We'll do that much faster, obviously, but Jamino, you any other tight ends, or you want to talk about quarterbacks you're not on?
Let's talk about quarterbacks I'm not on. I think the fast track to a losing fantasy team is to waste a second or third round, well, probably a second round pick on Lamar Jackson. I mean, I guess people will probably take him in the first round. I don't know. But it's really just about roster construction. I just don't see how you can, look at all these quarterbacks that are available later in this draft and then expect to be able to, recover from that often. I'm not saying don't take any Lamar Jackson. I'm certainly not going to have very much of them. And it's mostly about the fact that I just want to make sure that I get running back to this area of the draft. And I don't think that the outproduction of Jackson is going to be quite what it was last season compared to other quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's no knock on Lamar. It's just the opportunity cost of drafting him. We're currently sitting at 123 as far as his ADP on Underdog Fantasy. Beer, your thoughts on Jackson and some other quarterback that you're just you don't find yourself grabbing so much?
Yeah, I agree on Jackson. It's just a roster construction thing. Unless you go into it and say, all right, I'm going to stack Baltimore. I want to make it a point to get him, and that's fine if that's your goal. But I just think waiting at this position makes a ton of sense. So agree there. If he falls far enough, sure. You're in the late third round and Lamar and Mahomes are there, which rarely happens, really never. But then that point, then I might jump on him. My guy's Drew Brees, Dean. I just have a lot of concerns about the passing volume in this offense. Yes, Thomas is going to be great. He has some great weapons, but they're going to be able to run the ball. Their defense is much improved. Taysom Hill, a guy that's going to come on the field and steal touches, goal line opportunities. Maybe they even work Winston in once in a while. Who knows? So there's just a lot of reasons. Yes, he's efficient. It's just not the Drew Brees that we remember putting up 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. He doesn't have to do that. So he's a guy that where he goes, I just think it's way overpriced. He won't be on many of my teams at all. In fact, I don't think I've drafted Drew Brees once this entire summer.
Yeah, he's a man. He's 40. He's actually 41. And like you said, there's probably a non-zero chance if things get goofy that Winston gets some run or Hill gets some run. And if nothing else, like you said, Hill's going to siphon some touches, some snaps, and they do some goofy gadget plays. And sometimes he's involved in touchdowns. And that's very tilting when you have Brees in your team. Your thoughts, Jamino, as far as Brees and any other quarterback that you're not necessarily on?
Yeah, I mean, Brees is the other guy on my list here, so I'm in completely full agreement here. I'm just not interested in going with him in his final pro career, final pro season.
Running backs we don't want. Fire away.
Dalvin Cook is a player that I'm trying to shy away from right now. The situation in Minnesota is not good. Their win total right now is 9. That's a pretty good bet for the under in my estimation. It's a really good bet for the under as far as I can tell. I don't think that this team is going to perform that well on offense this season. And I look at the other backs that are available in the same vicinity as Dalvin Cook. There's really no time where I'm ever finding myself taking him. I'll take Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'll take Derrick Henry. I'll take all these guys that are up here at the top of the draft over him. And I just don't see any way that he makes for a better fantasy pick than all these guys. Sure, if he falls a good distance, you can take him. I might have a sprinkle of Dalvin Cook, and he's a really good player, really strong talent in the National Football League, can overcome bad teams and bad situations, especially with the pass catching. Just not for me in 2020.
Beer, a thought on Cook, and by all means, throw out a couple of running backs for us as far as guys you just don't feel justify their current ADP.
I have moved Cook down slightly. I'm probably not as pessimistic as Jamino, but I certainly get the point where that team is, the lack of weapons. Sure, they added a piece on defense, but I think the defense could be an issue. So you got contract situation. So just a lot of concerns where you can get a much safer guy, a Derrick Henry, a Mixon, who was just paid in that same range. So not as.
All right. I wasn't sure if that was on my end or not, but Beer's connection's a little funky right now. Let's jump back to Jamino. Hopefully you'll get Beer in just a second here. Jamino, fire away. Receivers that you were just you're not drafting.
DeAndre Hopkins is going to be in a situation in Arizona where he won't see nearly the same kind of target share that he was seeing in Houston. And the offense itself is a spread it around type of an offensive system. So I feel pretty confident that we're not going to see the big targets we saw in Houston and the big focus in the offense to the point where he's going to be worth his draft capital. So I'm shying away from Hopkins, betting that he does not ever reach anything close to the thresholds that we've known throughout his career. Maybe he'll be efficient and overcome my fears that the target volume won't be there. But I just think that there's guys like Allen Robinson who will probably eclipse his target share that I'd much rather have.
So, this show is it's just cursed. A previous show, our producer Devin, his power went out in the middle of the show. We barely get to finish it. We didn't get to finish it actually. It had the Sopranos finish, just went black. I assume, not really sure what happened there. Before we started recording it today, we had a power issue, and then we don't really know where beer is. So we're just gonna power on through some tight ends that you are, or unless you have more receivers. But receivers, who's ever on your list, fire away, whatever you have for us. You don't want.
Look, I think that Michael Thomas is difficult to draft right now because of his average draft position, so I'm shying away from him. DJ Moore is a player that I think he's a fantastic player in the National Football League, and I think that Carolina can end up being a team that passes more than we think, probably a little bit better on offense than we think. But just as a general rule, the players surrounding him in the draft are going to be able to deliver what I feel is a higher upside. Everyone from the guys we talked about to even guys like AJ Brown, who's just a silly athlete. And I don't think that we should be focusing our best ball plays on a player who's probably going to have a more condensed outcome curve. He'll have good seasons most of the time, but probably very few rare to great seasons.
Tight end stayaways.
Well, I mentioned Darren Waller earlier in the show, and I feel like that if we're paying like a 5th round price for him, you better get what you got from him in previous seasons. And I'm just not necessarily expecting quite the same level of it. I think he'll be good, and I think that he's a fantastic player. But just from a roster construction standpoint, Will Fuller and Marquise Brown are coming off the board in that area of the draft, and I'm trying to build. Especially if you get 4 flex positions to throw wide receivers at, I'm really looking for those spike weeks of those wide receivers and banking that I can find those tight ends later in the draft that can get something close to Waller. And we mentioned the Raiders aren't necessarily in the best position as a team. So, I don't want too many Raiders, and I just can't stomach Waller right now.
Give me your favorite value plays, your favorite late round flyers.
As I've been drafting later in these drafts, I'm really finding that Chris Herndon, who Beer mentioned earlier at the tight end position, is just continuing to drop and continuing to fill what I feel is a pretty good upside play deeper into drafts. So this is another reason why I'm not trying to get too ahead of myself drafting tight ends early. Eric Ebron is another player pending his health that seems to be in a good situation in Pittsburgh. Still going to be the red zone threat and still going to be the recipients of passing from one of the better red zone throwers in NFL history. So I'm interested in going ahead and getting involved with Ebron there and banking on the touchdown upside.
It appears, I believe, do we have Beer back?
I believe so. Little internet outage there for a minute. I guess they didn't like my Le'Veon Bell take.
we were saying how the show is cursed, I guess. Maybe you said Beetlejuice a couple more times. That's what happened. Nobody knows what happened on your end.
There.
We're just kind of flying through them now, but just whatever's on your list as far as your stayaways, guys. You don't find yourself drafting. It's not necessarily you don't like him, but just based upon the value when you have to take him. I think we left off. Do you have receivers and tight ends for us?
Yeah, I'll just wrap up the running backs. I won't even go much in depth here. I don't draft Le'Veon Bell at all. David Johnson's a guy I really have avoided as well. Mark Ingram, I worry about Dobbins kind of taking over there, and Devin Singletary. I think Zach Moss could be the guy there. So those are the running backs I'm avoiding. Receivers, it's mostly guys where I feel there's a teammate that's a better value. So Kenny Golladay, I don't hate the player, but give me Marvin Jones 4 rounds later who can produce the same numbers. Amari Cooper, give me Michael Gallup 3 to 4 rounds later, can produce the same numbers. So those are the big ones. I'm avoiding Keenan Allen, pretty much avoiding most of that Chargers offense. Steph Diggs, a guy that I'm not drafting a ton of. So that's pretty much the guys that I'm avoiding towards the higher end of the receiver position.
Tight ends that you're not finding yourself drafting?
Kind of that whole middle chunk of Hunter Henry, Evan Ingram, Darren Waller, Gronk. I mean, I'm kind of avoiding that. If I can get one of the big dogs, I like getting Andrews as well if he falls far enough. Even Ertz right now with the way that Philadelphia pass catching core is shaping up. But after that next group of 5, 6, 7 guys, I'd rather wait for Hawkinson, for Herndon, for Dallas Goedert, Blake Jarwin, Eric Ebron. I just think there's a ton of value at that position, waiting or even grabbing 2, 3 of those guys and not even grabbing an early tight end. So Hunter Henry is the main guy that I just don't see it this year. Whether it's Tyrod, whether it's Herbert, A-Bear, as we like to call him, I don't think it really matters for Hunter Henry.
So your favorite value plays that you're drafting late in the, your favorite flyers, essentially, outside of, I guess you can make it with stacks as well, too, if that's sort of the route you're taking. Your favorite late round plays.
Late round play. I'm coming around, and again, this may be my homerish, but hearing good things on Marquez Valdes-Scantling, so I'm kind of falling back into that. Even though that offense is not going to throw a ton, they moved him back to the slot, which I think can be a good spot for him. So grabbing him, some running backs, Daryl Williams, a guy that right now is locked into that backup role in Kansas City. So a lot of people still think it's DeAndre Washington. A lot of times you get Daryl Williams after DeAndre Washington goes, but just being tied to that offense. And if something were to happen, if he's the starter there and I'm getting him in the 12th, 13th round, sign me up for that all day. And then, of course, my boy Minshew, Dean. I'm taking him late in a lot of different drafts.
Oh, man. Jamino, who'd you make a face about? You're making a face on somebody you said. Was it MVS?
Yeah. Look, you can take Marquez.
I knew it was coming.
I would rather take late in the draft one of Beer's guys, Laviska Shenault, over a guy like Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
Oh, I'm absolutely doing that. I'm talking last round.
Miles Boykins pretty late. You can get Miles Boykin real deep in drafts, and he's going to be on the field a lot. And he's a 99th percentile catch radius guy. He's got the ability to operate on the outside in that Ravens offense where they really don't have a lot of guys that are working in that area. I mean, obviously Duvernay's around, and like maybe he could usurp Boykin for some of his playing time, but I'm still looking at him as a guy who's got the upside to be a player that is way underdrafted.
This is the Best Ball Hot Take Show presented by Underdog Fantasy. Again, Underdog Fantasy, they have the signature Best Ball Mania tournament, $1 million prize pool, $200K up top, $25 to jump in there, and they have a tournament for $5. That's similar structure, $100K prize pool, $20K up top. They're still drafting leagues. Check it out on iOS and on Android, underdogfantasy.com as well. All right, this is how we got to close strong, boys. Beer's been knocking Jamino out on volume, just firing off like 4 or 5 hot takes, and Jamino's just giving us one. One of those are going to hit for Beer. I don't know which one, but one's going to hit. One's going to land for sure.
Volume play, Dean. Just call me Leonard Fournette of the hot takes here.
It's a great strategy.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but just fire them off, and if 1 or 2 hit, boom.
We're going to go position by position. Beer, you can bat first. We're talking quarterbacks. Give me a quarterback-centric hot take.
So one that we didn't talk about, I want to get a different name in here. I think Joe Burrow is a top 10 quarterback this season. Gives you upside with his legs, surrounded by weapons. I know he's a rookie. I know we're dealing with COVID. I know there's not a lot of time to develop that rapport. But if we can get A.J. Green on the field with Tyler Boyd, I'm expecting Mixon to be a beast here. The offensive line is improved. You get Jonah Williams back. They're not great, but it's better. And I think Joe Burrow is pro ready. So Joe Burrow, top 10 fantasy quarterback this season.
Jamino, see it and raise it.
Look, if you want to look at the top 10, geez. You want to look at the top 3 at the end of the season, and you see Carson Wentz's name there, do not be surprised.
Ooh.
This guy can absolutely get it done with the best of them. And I just don't see this as an offense that's going to really, really, really score a lot of touchdowns on the ground. I mean, Miles Sanders can certainly get in the box, but I just see a lot of passing touchdowns coming out of this offense this season. And I see Wentz with a major bounce back. And don't be surprised if the guy's well over 4,500 yards and getting enough touchdowns to be up there in that top 5 conversation. And I'll say top 3 is possible.
Beer, I think Jamino was mocking that. He's like, this is a hot take, not lukewarm takes, top 10. Come on. Bring it at running back here, Beer.
Bring it at running back. All right, let's see what we got here, Dean. I'm going to go – I know Jamino hates Antonio Gibson, but so I'm going to bring him up just for that fact that Antonio Gibson's going to light the world on fire here. I mean, this is an offense we continue to talk about with no pass catchers outside of McLaurin. They're going to use him as a weapon. I think he's going to get the ball all over the field. So he doesn't even – it's the same take as James White, not needing carries. Just get the ball in this guy's hands, and we know how explosive he is. I don't want to hear about the 77 touches in college. All that tells me this guy's fresh, ready to unload. Top 15 running back, Dean, Antonio Gibson.
Jamino, does that meet your approval for hotness? Or
Bishop Sankey will have more career fantasy points than Antonio Gibson.
Wow.
No, I'm just kidding. That'd be great though. No, I'm waiting to see on that one. I don't want to be look, the situation with Peterson has made it very clear that Gibson's going to be the guy. So I don't want to take any takes too hot there with Gibson. I'll give you a hot take as far as the wide receiver position is concerned. DeAndre Hopkins is not a top 12 wide receiver this season. There are going to be a lot of wide receivers that get ahead of him on the board. He's not even going to be in the wide receiver 1 category.
All right, there you go. Beer, if you have a thought, that by all means, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, move on and talk about. Well, wait, hold on. Were you giving a receiver tight end?
Don't worry about it, Dean. I gave you a hot take. Let's go.
Trying to move this thing along here.
It threw me off. I'm like, wait, what position are we on?
I agree.
Give me something.
I agree on Hopkins. I just think he's being overdrafted, so I'll leave it at that. Will Fuller, top 3 wide receiver. Bring in the fire. He will stay healthy. He will tear it up this year with Deshaun Watson. So is that hot enough, Dean? Top 3. I didn't say top 10. I said top 3. Will Fuller.
It is hot enough, and it's also the appropriate position, apparently, that gets wrong wide receiver.
We're moving right along here.
Jamino, do you have potentially a tight end hot take or any hot take?
Yeah, I got a hot take for you at tight end here, Dean. The order of tight end finish this year is going to be number 1, not Travis Kelce, probably George Kittle. But as far as who we're going to see in the number 3 to 5 position, and I'll go ahead and say number 3 since this is a hot take show, my guy, TJ Hawkinson. Get there.
Best friend of Travis Kelce.
That's how you get to the top 3. You befriend and shower with George Kittle.
Barry, do you have a hot take as far as tight ends?
I love Hawkinson, but I just want to – Chris Herndon outscores TJ Hawkinson this
Woo!
season. Just to jab my boy here a little bit. I love them both. I think Herndon's in for a big year. Hot take-wise, I think Mark Andrews, tight end 1.
Well, that's it. That's the show. We finished strong. All the hot takes out there. We're going to clip and edit and cut the ones that are good, and the bad ones never happened. Right. Devin is just going to produce them right out of the show.
Sit on the cutting room floor. They never to be seen again.
Where did that clip about Bishop Sankey go? I don't know. Didn't happen. Beer, it's been a blast. I assume you're still drafting right now?
Oh, yeah. I'm about to fire up a draft as soon as we're done here, Dean. So, yeah, drafting away. You'll find me in the Underdog streets for sure. So, there's all the videos from all the teams you guys can go back and check out. I've also done 6-packs on every position, guys that I'm drafting in DraftKings Best Ball, but a lot of it applies to Underdog here. So it's been fun, boys. Always love talking football with you. Hopefully we get to do it more. Dean, I know you and I will be spending some time in the season talking each and every week on Sunday mornings. Jamino, been a blast, dude. Always respect your opinion and your takes and the knowledge you bring. So it's been fun, and appreciate you hanging out and spitting those fire takes for us.
Right back at you, Beer.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Learned a ton from my boy Beer this summer. Thanks, Beer.
You got it, buddy.
Yeah, and Jamino's got to get back to work too. He's one of the hardest working guys here behind the scenes. Anything you like here at RotoGrinders, it's probably because Jamino's got his hands in it. It's been a blast, guys. Much appreciate and I've learned a lot too, because I'm always behind. I'm always like, well, I play daily fantasy, and that's where I tend to play. It's new to me as far as the best ball world, and I'm always like, well, is today football? Okay, then I'll learn about it tomorrow or when I have to. And I've learned a lot, so I appreciate you guys kind of taking me along the way, take me on this journey. Of course, we have a whole bunch of episodes on the RotoGrinders channel, and Beer was talking about the 6-pack. There's a bunch of 6-packs on there as well, too. You guys can check it out. Like and subscribe. For Underdog Fantasy, for Christopher Jamino, for Chris Prince, a.k.a. Beer Makers Fan, I was Dean. This was football. It was best ball. We're out of here. Holler. Go Heat.